Hi, I'm Kaylee, and I'm a psychology student at Oregon State University's eCampus. I would like to share with you a psychology experiment that I think will really benefit you. But first things first, we're going to talk about how the experiment was conducted and the statistics behind it. Yes, I said statistics. Gross. Why would psychologists need to use statistics? Well, have you ever picked up a research paper in psychology and found the results section full of crazy numbers and letters that you don't understand? Then they somehow make a conclusion based on those. As we go through the paper, I've decided to share with you, I'm going to give you some basics of the statistics these researchers used so that it may help you understand the use of it not only in this paper, but in peer-reviewed science in general. The peer-reviewed paper we're going to discuss is called Counting Blessings versus Burdens, an experimental investigation of gratitude and subjective well-being in daily life. It asks the question, does a grateful outlook affect psychological and physical well-being? Experiments to test this were conducted by Robert Emmons from the University of California, Davis, and Michael McCullough from the University of Miami. It was published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2003. At the time, there were plenty of secular and religious books on the benefits of gratitude, but they lacked scientific evidence. You can see here, just from a simple Google search, all the different books out there on gratitude that there are. Emmons and McCullough, however, decided to put it to the test using the scientific process. To start this journey, let's look at how they defined grateful outlook. They specifically stated it involves the perception of positive, unearned personal outcome from someone or something. It is distinct from positive thinking. It is seeing one's life as a gift. Notice how this relates to religious groups such as Christianity and their theology of grace. So let's start with the first study. They had 192 undergraduate students, participants, and divided them into 3 independent groups. Group 1 was the gratitude group, where they were asked to write down 5 things they were grateful for weekly. Group 2 was the hassles group, where they were asked to write down 5 hassles weekly. And Group 3 was the neutral group, where they were simply asked to write down impactful events weekly. At the end of 10 weeks, they reported on a scale rating their mood, their physical health, social support, and exercise. When the researchers acquired their data, they had to organize it in a way where they could analyze it and test it. Specifically, they had to use a statistical test in order to determine if the 3 groups were really all that different from each other. Let's look at the statistical test that they used and how they chose what statistical test to use. Here's a table in a Statistics for Psychology textbook that shows which statistical test to use. So first, we need to look at the independent variable. And in this example, it is nominal, or like a name. So it would be gratitude. It's the category that we are manipulating. And the dependent variable, or the category that they are expecting to be affected, are numbers. So it is scale. So we're looking here at number 2. So we follow down the chart and see that we are looking for how many samples that we have. And by the way, we have 1 independent variable, and then we're looking for how many samples. And remember, we have 3 groups of the independent variable, so we're looking for either this one or this test. And remember, we said that the groups were independent of each other. There are different people for each group. So we will be conducting, well, the researchers are conducting a one-way between groups ANOVA. Indeed, that is what they used. So let's talk about what a one-way ANOVA is, what it tells us, and how to interpret the output. It allows us to compare 3 or more groups, letting us know if there are at least 2 of the groups that are significantly different. If you look here, this is the data set with a normal curve for one population or sample. And here's the data set for the other population or sample. And so these tests are going to compare these 2 and determine if they are different enough to be significant. And so if you look at this, just imagine a third population being compared in here. And that's what the one-way ANOVA does. So in order to make this calculation, we calculate what is called an F statistic. And the calculation is a long process by hand, which is why the majority of researchers use statistical software. So here is essentially all the calculations that have to be conducted in order to get your F value or F statistic over here. So statistical software is our friend indeed. One of the next steps is to determine the critical value. This is the value that if the F statistic surpasses would be considered a significant difference. The researchers must first find the degrees of freedom between the groups and the degrees of freedom within the groups. The researchers calculated the between groups degrees of freedom by subtracting 1 from the total number of samples and came up with 2. They calculated the within groups degrees of freedom by taking the total number of all participants and subtracting the number of samples to get 189. Next, let's go to a free statistic resource online called StatKey. So we're going to go to StatKey. I usually type it in Google, and then it's this one at the top, StatKey Log 5. Now we will go down to theoretical distributions and over here to F, because remember it's a F distribution because it is a F statistic. So for the numerator, we input the between degrees of freedom, which the researchers said was 2. All right, so we put 2 at the top. And the within degree freedom is the denominator, which they said was 189. Okay, so let's click OK or enter. And here we have the distribution. From here you will see this, and next we'll click on right tail up at the top, right here. And that will give us our level of confidence. We would like also called a P level. And this is actually percentage, and this is looking at a P level of only 2.5%. So we're going to do a P level of 0.5. So let's change it to 0.05 up here. All right, and so essentially that's 5%. In other words, it's a 95% confidence level. All right, at the bottom we see that our cutoff value is 3.044. So when we conduct a one-way ANOVA and get an output that is above this number, then there is a significant difference between 2 or more of our samples. The paper revealed that they had an overall F statistics of this first study of 4.69. So it was definitely past the cutoff value. And they said that with that, their P value was 0.01. So let's see if we put that in, if it ends up being that, 4.69. And let's see if the P value ends up being 0.01 with that. Yep. So that seems right. So it is less than 0.05. So this shows significance. So now we know that there is a difference between at least 2 of the groups. To determine which groups out of the 3 were really different, they had to conduct more statistical tests to compare each group to each other. These are called post hoc tests. They determined that the gratitude condition resulted in more gratitude than did the Hassel's condition, with a p-value of less than 0.05. If you look here, this matches over here. So they conducted an ANOVA test for each one of these dependent variables, okay? But the only significant difference they found was in this gratitude composite between gratitude here and Hassel's. Between the events versus Hassel's and the events versus gratitude, there was no significant difference. And you can see how they labeled significant differences between the groups with A or B if they're the same or different. If we look further, we see information about Cohen's d, which is essentially how important the significance is. It has to do with the amount of overlap there is in the samples, independent of sample size. The larger the number is, the more effect it has. In other words, the less the samples overlap. Here we see it is 0.56, which is a medium effect. We don't have the time to discuss about the correlation stats they also use, but hopefully what we have learned thus far will help us to understand the next two studies a little better. So let's go on to the second study. Going on to the second study, the researchers found that their first study was insufficient to show how gratitude can influence positive or negative emotions in general. So they changed up their experiment design a bit. Study 2 is the same as Study 1, except participants were required to record in their journals daily over a 2-week period. Another difference is that life events was replaced with downward social comparison. Essentially, it is comparing yourself to others who are less than you. It appears positive, but is it as positive as expressing gratitude? There were 157 undergraduate participants as part of this second study, and they rated their daily experiences on rating forms in subjects such as exercise, sleep, or helping someone. Once again, a one-way ANOVA was conducted where they found overall significance of p-value of less than 0.001. Remember when I said that less than 0.05 is typically the standard for significance? 0.001 seems to be really showing something to us here. And you can see right here in the paper where it records this overall main effect for significance. The post hoc test they conducted indicated once again that the differences between the gratitude group and Hassel's group are significant. Not only that, Cohen's d is large, equaling 0.88. Remember the first test was only 0.56? They were also able to indicate in this test that there was a difference between positive and negative emotions between the groups, which we're going to take a look at here. So let's look at these results here. We can see here between gratitude composite and positive affect factor, there was determined significance as indicated by the stars here with p-value of less than 0.05. Now the positive affect factor, which I think of positive emotion, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But we can see here there is significance here, which was not like that in the first study. They did not find significance for this one in the first study. So once again, the gratitude is significantly different from Hassel's, but not social comparison. Social comparison was not significantly different from either gratitude or Hassel's. So that's kind of interesting. If we look here, we see that gratitude is also significantly different from Hassel's for the positive affect factor, but once again, not from social comparison. Once again, kind of interesting. This study, however, was not able to replicate the positive effects on physical health that the first study showed. As scientists, they decided to conduct another experiment for clarification and to see if results from the first and second study would be replicated in a non-student sample with chronic disease. So let's take a look at how they conducted Study 3. The researchers recruited 65 people with a neuromuscular disease and divided them into two groups this time. The gratitude condition, which is the same as in Study 1 and Study 2. The second group is the control condition, which only recorded their daily ratings. The participants were not aware of the purpose of the study that they were participating in. This helps control what is known as demand characteristics. Demand characteristics can occur when participants anticipate the purpose of the study and change their behavior to align with that, sometimes unconsciously. Participants recorded daily their ratings over 3 weeks on their emotion, their well-being, health, activities of daily living, and for this study, research asked for ratings from participants' spouses or close ones. Once again, a one-way ANOVA statistical test was used to compare the results of these two, not three groups this time. The overall result is a p-value of less than 0.01, which is significant. In other words, those with illness who recorded daily gratitude over 3 weeks in comparison to those who did not resulted in significantly different results in regard to both emotion here and the overall gratitude composite. You can see here, it appears that the practice of daily gratitude increased these positive emotions and decreased negative ones. Now, if we look at Table 5, we see that life as a whole, upcoming week, in connection with others, is also significantly higher in the gratitude condition. Now, if we look at Table 6, we can see that there is only a difference for the hours of sleep, right here, and how refreshed one feels upon waking. Even the observer reports by spouses indicated that those in the gratitude condition showed more positive emotion and overall life satisfaction. So there you have it, scientific evidence on how gratitude is actually good for you. And if I were you, I would suggest making it a habit to express gratitude either through writing something down in a gratitude journal like this one, which as you can see, I've definitely wrote things in there. I haven't yet. Or if you're religious, prayer is a great way to express gratitude. And I really like this book too. It's by Dr. John Gottman, and he talks about how gratitude is the antidote to contempt in regards to marriages. So this is really good. So I hope you liked this presentation of this psychology research. And if you're interested in anything else, just let me know in the comments section below, and I appreciate you checking it out. Have a good day.